Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Know the Foe podcast on the Bill on the Buckeyes Substack. I'm Bill Rabinowitz. I'm joined, graced by the presence of Nathan Baird of the Indianapolis Star. Nathan, a lot of Ohio State fans are familiar with you because you, of course, covered Ohio State for for Cleveland.com for how many years?
5 years. My first day on the job was the day they named Justin Fields the starting quarterback in 2019. Officially named him the
Okay.
starting quarterback in 2019, and I was here through the end of the 2023 season. So,
Okay. Well, Nathan did a great job. I considered him one of my toughest competitors, but obviously a very friendly competition or whatever you want to call it. It's good to have him on the beat. We
as
we
far as
miss
you know,
we miss him dearly on the beat. Um, anyway, he went to from the best, one of the best football programs in the country, to one of the worst. But there's a consolation. Nathan also covers Purdue basketball, which is number one in the country, and obviously, one of the very elite programs. And that's probably a nice thing to have in your back pocket as we get to November with this Boilermaker football team.
oh, I would say it's in my front pocket.
Okay,
it's
okay,
it's exactly the opposite of the Ohio State situation. I left 1 year before Ohio State won the national championship. I left. I got here 1 year after Purdue finally made a Final Four again. So I did not time that up well. But no, I mean basketball's a thing here, especially right now while football is subdued to say the least.
okay. Well, let's talk about football. I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk to you about
That's all right.
basketball. Um, this is about what we expected from Purdue this season, right? 2-7. Um, Winless in the Big Ten. Haven't won a Big Ten game since 2023. No surprise.
No, and this is essentially what I thought it would look like. I thought they would win 3 games this year. It was my prediction. I don't know if they're going to get there now. They missed their opportunity here with this stretch of 3 games they had recently at Minnesota, at Northwestern, home against Rutgers. I thought they'd find a way to win one. They should have won 2 of them. And if they get to the end of this thing, 2-10, 4-8 would look very different from that. But in terms of just the performance, this is pretty much exactly what I thought it was going to look like. That this was a less talented team than they had last year, but I think it's a better coached team. I think there's just a better organization in place. It's just a more experienced and stable situation than what they had before. And that's pretty much how this has played out. I thought that this would new organization, the new coaching staff, Barry Odom and the guys that he brought with him from UNLV, because they had just done this. They had just taken a program at UNLV that was an afterthought in college football and made them nationally. I don't know if you want to say nationally relevant. I guess you probably would say they weren't in the national championship picture or really the playoff picture, but had become a top 25 team. And that was an achievement. And you had to do it a lot through the portal and remaking the roster. So I thought that gave him some, again, learned experience for what he was going to need to do at Purdue. And I think they did kind of the best job they probably could as far as reassembling the roster. And I thought that this new coaching staff might be able to push them through because even though they won 1-11 last year, there were a couple of games, Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State, that were right there to be won. They just couldn't quite win them in the margins. And even though the product has looked better over really from game to game this year, they've still been losing the games in the margins. Like they're still too volatile to put all those factors together and actually win a game in the Big Ten.
But you can see a foundation being built under Barry Odom. You can see progress.
I think so. I think you definitely see progress in intangible ways. Like there's just a different vibe around this team. Like last year, there was some, even though it was only 2 years into Ryan Walters, and I wasn't there for the first year, I was still hanging out with you at the Woody, but there was just a kind of desolation that had started to set in last year. Like that team, there very quickly, I thought, fell to a place of and we knew going into last season that was a very, very tough schedule. I mean, they played 5 playoff teams last year, including IU. Like that was a very difficult schedule for any team. And it felt like when things went wrong early, that just kind of weighed on last year's team. And even though this year's team, I mean, they play or will play or 6 of the teams that were in last night's top 25 for the playoff, like because they also play Notre Dame in addition to all the Big Ten teams. Like, so that's a very daunting schedule, but it hasn't felt like a weight on this team and program the way last year did. Because I think again, some of that is just having a little more of a North Star in Barry Odom, and he's not like a flashy guy and a rah guy, at least not with us for sure. And you see him being a little bit more like stoic on the sideline, I think. But I think that has been helped this team keep its focus where it needs to be in terms of improvement. He prioritized from day one. Me and other people were always already back in the winter trying to ask questions about, okay, but like, what's the long-term goal here? Like, what are you trying to propel towards and build towards? And he very adamantly was like, we have to win games this year. Like all these guys who just came in and only have 1 year of college football left, I owe it to them to do everything I can to win games this year. And that has probably helped them be as close as they have been on a couple occasions and be as competitive as they've been in games like last week against Michigan, even against USC and Illinois to some extent earlier this year. It just hasn't been enough. I just feel like the talent gap is what they haven't been able to overcome. They still have no margin for error. You saw that very explicitly last week against Michigan. You can even win the red zone turnover battle and still lose because you committed one of your own, and that one changes everything. So it has felt sometimes like so close yet so far away, but you do see what can be momentum now in the present reality of college football. How much does this roster change, and does it take away some of the players that they think are the sources of that momentum as they go into next year, guys that they aren't able to then replace through the portal? That remains to be seen, but they are talking about being fully funded in revenue share and putting the resources behind football that need to be there to be competitive in that realm too. I just think they need these last 4 games, even if they're not winnable. I think it's a chance to show some proof of concept to those guys that you're trying to pull in.
Let's talk about last week's game a little bit. 21-16 loss at the Big House to Michigan. I watched that game, most of it at least, and it was one of those deals from my perspective that Purdue was certainly competitive with Michigan. But I always got the sense that Michigan, if they just wouldn't shoot themselves in the foot, would have just pulled away. I also got the sense that if Purdue hadn't shot themselves in the foot, they could have pulled an upset. It was like a game that neither team really wanted to win at times.
Yeah, exactly. To me, like this is so emblematic of Purdue that again, so close but so far away. So let's look at the last 2 minutes of that game. They intercept Bryce Underwood at the 5-yard line. So you're taking points off the board from Michigan at that point. You've got just a couple minutes left in the first half. It's 7-7. If you get one first down there, you're probably expending enough clock that even if they stop you and you get a decent punt, they're not going to have time to do anything with it. Or maybe they get a field goal, but probably not even that. You might be able to just run out the half for all intents and purposes. Instead, they go 3 and out. And their punter, Jack McAllister, who punted it, was on the punter on Washington's national championship runner-up team, was at Nebraska for a hot minute before he came to Purdue, has been very good all season. And for whatever reason, at this moment, he shanks one like almost directly out of bounds. It's a 21-yard net punt. Michigan gets a ball to 32 and scores 5 plays later. And in a game that you lose by 5 points, that's the game. Like just that's how close it is. And there's other examples that happen during that game. If Purdue doesn't have its own red zone turnover early in the game, if they're able to get points out of that, how does that change the complexion of everything that happens after that? Like this isn't the same winless in the Big Ten Purdue program that Ohio State fans saw last year. Doesn't mean it's not better talent wise, I don't think, but there is a better just foundation as you used before. So that what happened there against Michigan, a version of that happened in the Rutgers game, version of that happened in the Minnesota game. To some extent, you could say a version of that even happened against Illinois. I thought that was like one of my first hints that our eyes weren't deceiving us. Is when at the end of that game, the guy who puts out the win probability, like what when you get to the end of the game, what were your win-loss odds? And Purdue's winning odds for that Illinois game, which it wasn't like necessarily that close of a game, was like 25%. That tells you if you take out the luck and you just go by what happened in the game, they would win 2.5 out of 10 games or whatever. And that's not good enough to win, but it told you that the performance level was there. It was just a matter of whether they could sync it up in those most winnable games. Right now, I don't know if it's going to matter. They can play their best football this week of the season, and as long as Ohio State doesn't make some of the same mistakes Michigan did, it's still probably going to be a comfortable win.
Um, I know these are two words that no coach ever wants to hear, but was it in some ways a moral victory last week?
Yeah, they definitely don't talk like that around here. I think it was, again, I don't think of it in terms of moral victory. I think of it more in terms of proof of concept. Like they needed that proof of concept by finding a way to finish off
Yeah.
Minnesota or Rutgers or both. I mean, they were both wins right there to be had. And what they can do now is, I think they did earn some respect. I think that's probably more important. Less the moral victory for themselves, but probably some respect from outside of the program that, oh, okay, like we need to like acknowledge that they're still not winning and there's something to be said for that, but it's there things are turning in the right direction. And I do think though that now you have to replicate it because I think of these last four teams, Michigan is no better than the third on that list. You know, they still got to go at Washington. They still play Ohio State and IU at home, the number 1 and 2 teams in the country. So, what can you do in these last four games? I think they're in a little bit of a tough spot because I think Barry Odom's right. Like they owe it to everybody in that program, especially the guys who only have 1 year left, to try to do everything they can to win. You've also got to build for the future. You've also probably got to give some younger guys some looks, give them more reps, start getting them ready for being the future of the program because you don't want to replicate this. But at the same time, with the portal, that's I think a
Right.
moving target anyway as to who's going to be around and who
Right.
you're going to be able to go get. Like they can still upgrade every position on this team in the portal. So it's more about what it meant, I think, maybe as a signal. Again, if they can replicate it in these last four games, they competitive in each of these last four games, and they have been even in the games that they've lost. I think only the Notre Dame game, second half of that looks kind of stinky, but most of the time they've been respectably losing.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm looking at the scores.
but
32
yeah,
17 to USC,
if
27
they can
to
do
Michigan,
that, yeah,
Minnesota.
if they can do that through these last few games, I think it sends a message to guys who might have otherwise gotten poached from previous teams to say, like, no, like we're on the right track. Like, stay here. You know how close we are. Stay here and be part of the solution. We'll go get you some help. I think it also sends a message to guys who they're trying to get who might have more, who might have a lot of options to be able to, the one thing that Purdue can sell right now is playing time to basically anybody.
Right.
At some point, they have to get away from that and start getting the people who have that option of playing time at even better places. How do you convince them to come to Purdue? I think these last four games, if even if they can't win them, they've got to show people something in those four to start getting a couple of those guys out of the portal this year.
Um, Purdue lost its best player. I would think you'd say he's the best player, running back Devin Mockabee. Um,
Yeah, I mean they lost yeah, certainly their most like dependable and a guy who meant a lot in terms of just being a veteran leader and embodied really the spirit of the team in some ways. And a guy who came as a walk on and then stuck around, even when his star rose and there were two different coaching changes, he stuck around and stayed at Purdue and tried to be a part of the solution. And he gained a lot of respect, I think, from the fan base for that. So I don't know if he's not, he wouldn't have been number one on my list of guys who are the keys to Purdue winning a game necessarily, but everything that he meant to the team, yeah, it's tough to lose him. Yeah, I think just as a sports fan, you hope those guys get to go out on their own terms, right?
yeah. What's the exact injury he had?
It was an ankle injury, suffered it late against Rutgers, and they were trying to get him back this year. We'd heard that was probably going to be rough, and then he had a procedure last Friday that kind of confirmed when he came out of that he just wasn't going to be able to go. He does have professional aspirations. Frankly, other than pride, doesn't have much to play for these games. Like he needs to have a good combine if he even gets invited, and good tryouts next spring. So I understand why
Yeah,
they would push it. You know what I mean?
sure. I remember watching him play and thinking that was a guy he ran hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he stood out to me from the press box for whatever that's worth. And obviously his stats are pretty good. Let's talk about the quarterback, Ryan Brown. Stats are not great. How would you describe how he's played?
I think the best description of him is that I think he's right now a really good football player and still trying to become a better quarterback. And they have used that to their advantage a few times. We've seen him make like really smart, savvy football decisions. There have been a couple times where they've done some gimmicky stuff, trick plays that have gotten him the ball out in space, and it's worked sometimes better than others, but it did result in a touchdown at Notre Dame that was notable. It actually resulted in one at USC, even though the play got busted up. But so you see him out there like doing things that just having the grit and those sorts of things that you want from a football player. He's big. He's about like 6'4", but and he can run. So at his size, the speed that he has for a quarterback, I think is useful. And he can, freelance when the pocket collapses and things like that. They don't necessarily run him a lot, especially because he got dinged up a little bit against Northwestern. They don't run him a lot on his own necessarily, but as a scrambler, he's really talented. But I think the quarterback stuff is still coming along. This is really the first year he had started an abundance of games. He started 2 games last year. He played part of 1 game the year before that, but he's still earlier in his development. He's not he's only now classifying what you'd call like a more of a veteran Big Ten quarterback. So I still think there's some development that has to take place there in terms of decision making and awareness. He's also had a receiving core, frankly, that has not helped him out. Their best tight end receiving option since Max Clare went to Columbus was a guy named George Burhan. He's been injured most of the year, so that's taking basically one position off the field. Like they don't target their tight ends very much at all, and the receivers. We saw all of preseason camp basically, and we could see this coming, that there was a lot of inconsistency there in terms of just ball skills and being able to catch the ball. And that's carried over into the regular season. They've had a lot of drops this year. And it seems always that when he's doing well, maybe the drops happen. And then that leaves him no margin for error to make a mistake later, right? This is kind of the story of the season for the whole roster. So he's a guy who has the athletic skills and the toughness to, that the teams have to respect. But I am interested to see how he's going to respond to an Ohio State pass rush with NFL receivers in the sector, the DBs in the secondary. Like this is a tough combination for any quarterback, as you've seen all season.
Right. Yeah, they don't exactly have Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate on the Royal Lakers roster, huh?
No, they don't. If he was Mike Shearer, the defensive coordinator, was asked the other day, who is Jeremiah Smith on the scout team, and he said that what you'd really like to do is have someone line up at the line of scrimmage and have another guy downfield wearing a number 4 jersey to replicate what it's really like, because he's gone before you know it, and he's a little bit of a ghost back there again, as you've seen. So that is going to be something to watch, because this secondary has been susceptible to some impressive passing performances this season, and they haven't played anybody as good as this yet.
Yeah. But the defense does have some pretty good players, right? So linebacker is pretty good. I don't know how the front is.
Well, the front is actually where I think they have a chance to build something. They had a guy named TJ Lindsey who came in from Auburn and was going to be really good for them up front, I think. He got hurt very early and is out for the year. And they've mixed in some guys behind him that have some promise. They're younger guys. I think the defensive interior especially can grow into something. They also got a guy named CJ Nunnally from Akron, who is an edge rusher who's been really coming on. I've been really impressed with how he has built over the course of the season. They had some other guys, older guys, who started the year on the edge, and they've kind of been phased back for some younger guys like him who have stepped up and started to make an impact there. I do think the defensive front has some talent. The defensive line has some talent. The linebackers, Manny Powell, Charles Correa, 2 guys that came with Odom from UNLV, and Powell, a very veteran guy. Correa, younger, definitely has some upside. I think there's still some volatility in their performance, and but have been definitely an improvement over what Purdue was putting on the field at linebacker last year. That was probably their weakest position last year. It's a secondary where they just aren't getting consistently good play. I think cornerback has been susceptible at times. They've gotten good safety play from a couple of transfers, Miles Slusher and Taj Rael, but there's still some volatility at the back end of this defense. And when you look at what Ohio State can do on paper, that's where there's some susceptibility, especially if they're keeping the pressure off of staying. If Purdue can't create a pass rush that's disruptive, it could be bombs away.
Are there any matchups that you see that could favor Purdue in this game?
Could favor Purdue,
or at least be a stalemate?
Maybe that defensive line. Like I do think that there is some talent up there. Now the way Ohio State is going to be able to scheme and attack things might neutralize that and not make it anything that Purdue can take advantage of. That's maybe the one position where I would think that they would almost have to make their impact. The defensive line, along with those linebackers, Mike Sherrill, the defensive coordinator, he will dial up blitzes. I think he has timed some well this year. He'll bring safeties on blitzes. He'll bring those linebackers on blitzes, and they'll come from. It's not quite like what we used to think of with Jim Knowles, or maybe it's like coming from everywhere, but kind of. It's not quite that frequent, but he has timed up some good blitzes this year. So I think if they can be disruptive with the front or with the just by blitzing and creating that pressure, maybe that's something. But it really at the skill positions, no. Like no. I was saying, I was just on the podcast that we were just doing for ours, Boilers Extra. I almost said Buckeye talk. Old habits are hard to break. I was recounting a conversation I had earlier this year where someone at Purdue was saying, well, the fear is that, you stop their receivers and then Max Clare burns you. And I was like, well, don't worry about that. Like, you're not going to stop their receiver. Like, you're just not. And it's been funny to watch, Max Clare has like 20 receptions this year. It's what I was kind of telling people, like, he's not going there to catch the ball a bunch of times because Ohio State doesn't throw to their tight ends. He's going there to be an important piece of a much bigger picture, a much bigger plan.
Sure. Is there any scenario in which you could imagine Purdue even threatening an upset?
Well, I mean, if you take some of what they did against Michigan, it's not fair. I don't compare Bryce Underwood and Julian Sayin at this point in their careers. I think Sayin's just much better and has better weapons in the passing game. And Ohio State doesn't jump off the page as much with its running game, but it's obviously still productive there. I mean, this defense is up for a much bigger challenge. But if it were to rise to that challenge and then not make the mistakes that it made last year or week, whether that's a red zone turnover, they've been really bad. They're the worst Big Ten red zone scoring team, red zone efficiency team. They have some trouble in short yardage running situations. I feel like every team I cover has trouble in short yardage because that was the thing at Ohio State for years was those short yardage running situations. But if they somehow they're going to try to shorten the game, probably they had a 9.5 minute touchdown drive against Michigan last week where they overcame having a touchdown wiped off the board and a first down holding penalty when they got to midfield. Things that usually capsized them, they were able to break through that and get a touchdown. Like if they can minimize all those mistakes, but even then, I just Ohio State's going to score. They're not going to hold Ohio State to 21 points. I just don't see how that's fathomable, and I don't know that I see how Purdue's going to be able to consistently move the ball enough to win a shootout. So it's very difficult, not just on paper, but just like having watched them, to expect them to play with the consistency necessary. But I will say, Michigan was another example. All the elements are there at one point or another. They just haven't been able to calibrate them. And they needed to calibrate them in that 3-game stretch. I guess you could even extend that to Michigan. They weren't able to do that. It's very difficult to see how they calibrate them to such an extent that they beat Ohio State.
In other words, the pieces are there at different times, but they haven't put them all together. But it's a better team than, we saw them last year, and they just looked overmatched in every way. Personnel, players, coaching, everything.
Yeah.
And at that point, I can't remember if Ryan Walters had been fired at that point. I think he had been, but they were.
He wasn't fired until after the season.
Okay.
It was
becoming
a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, right. You could just tell they were just going through the motions a little bit. I don't get that sense this year with Purdue. Look, they lost to Michigan by 5 points. That's a credible performance. Not that I think Michigan's great, but that's a credible performance. And they had a chance to, a few things bounce different ways, or they don't make some mistakes to maybe even pull an upset, which would have been shocking.
That's the difference between the good teams and the teams that are still striving to be good. Even just a good team would have probably found a way to beat Michigan on one of its worst nights of the year, right? It was there to be taken, and they just can't take it yet. I will say, obviously Purdue has been sort of a nemesis for Ohio State if you go back over the last couple of decades, the one Big Ten team other than Michigan of late that could really, with any measure of consistency, beat Ohio State. And even then, obviously, it wasn't all the time. But, when they did that, you look at 2018 with Rondale Moore, who was probably the best football player on that field that night. I'm not saying he was eventually the best football player or that he was even really actually better than Chase Young or whoever at the time. But on that night, he was unstoppable. Basically, you could look back at whatever the year before that was, 2010, I think, with the Ryan Kerrigan game. Like when Purdue has NFL talent and like real NFL talent, not like third day NFL talent, like real NFL talent. That's how it creates those upsets. That's how it's been able to beat Ohio State on a few occasions. That's hard to see right now. I don't look at this roster and see like difference making NFL talent, but maybe it's this matchup that brings that out in someone. I don't know.
Yeah, and Ohio State fans don't have to be told Ohio State's history at Ross State. I mean, you have the Drew Brees game 25 years ago. You have,
but again, NFL talent to say the least. Like it isn't Ross State Stadium and it isn't the Purdue jersey. It has been the guys wearing it. Yeah. And as we've seen the last couple of years, they haven't had those guys. And more than likely, this is an extension of that.
What's the mood in town about this game? Or is it all basketball?
Well, it's mostly basketball. people are all in on basketball right now. I think they're kind of now stepping back. There is some version of the fan base that I think is already sort of taking a negative turn towards Odom and his staff. And listen, this isn't a successful first year, but they were coming from rock bottom and they've pulled it up from rock bottom. I think the fact that what Curt Cignetti was able to do in year one at Indiana has maybe colored people's perspectives on this, but that's such an outlier across the country, not even just in the Big Ten. Like that sort of thing doesn't really happen. And frankly, Curt Cignetti didn't have to play a schedule like Ryan Walters did last year or Barry Odom has this year. That's not me making excuses for them. It's just the plain truth. Like they're going to end up playing 5 playoff teams last year and probably 4 or 5 this year, including IU. So give them credit for that. But I think right now it's just a matter of there's got to be a breakthrough with wins before people start to allow themselves to have any, because things have flatlined a little bit. Even if this is a better version of what happened last year, it's still more or less what happened last year. They haven't beaten a power conference team. They beat Southern Illinois. They beat Ball State. Lots of people do. So, until that next thing happens, I don't think you're going to see people start to come around. But I am also hearing a lot of people who look at Barry Odom and look at the product on the field and recognize where they are from a talent disparity. They lost, like the best players who could be on this team from last year's team are not on this team. They're at Ohio State and Oregon and Texas and Clemson. They all left to go other places. The cupboard was really bare. And when you put all that together, I think people do have the perspective that Barry Odom is doing some good things here. Now I think it's just a matter of what can you do in the portal to get the players that can take the culture and the foundation and actually turn it into wins.
Well, Nathan, is there anything else that people should know about this game? I think
it's weirdly starting at 1:00. Make sure you.
Yeah, that's weird. Yes, 2:00.
We are on Eastern time here. This is the.
It is. Oh, here Eastern time.
So it's not even like it's noon here. It's 1:00 here too. So. If you come in early for the game and you want to see basketball Friday night, you might be able to scalp a ticket. They are playing Friday night at Mackey Arena. Pretty good team there. They're playing Oakland, so I mean Purdue. Purdue's a pretty good team.
Yeah. It's Oakland from Michigan, which actually is I don't know what they are this year, but they've actually been a pretty good, decent program. Oakland.
Michigan scored 112 points on them Monday night.
Oh, I take it back.
Yeah, they had a little thing in the NCAA tournament a couple years ago. They were kind of darlings for a minute, but no, they're kind of just like a mid-major right now. I mean, I think what Purdue needs out of this game is for Ohio State fans to come away with some version of what I think Michigan fans came away with last week. I mean, yes, probably some disappointment in how your team played if it ends up being relatively close, but maybe also some grudging respect of what you're seeing. Maybe not even grudging of what you're seeing on the field, saying that like, okay, that's still not good enough to win in the Big Ten, but it's headed in the right direction. I think that's the best that Purdue fans can probably hope for right now, is that more people start to recognize that they're headed in the right direction, including the players that they want to come here and play and get them to that destination.
And stay, the ones who were there.
Right.
All right. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for telling our readers, viewers about Purdue. It doesn't sound like the hopeless kind of awful team that Ohio State has seen lately. So, I'm not sure Ohio State fans would agree, but maybe it'll be a more competitive game this year, whether that's good or not.
Well, I still predicted 42-7 after everything I just said. So I'm not predicting a close game, but
Yeah.
I guess that's not everything that Purdue has to play for right now.
Right. All right. Well, again, Nathan, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Nathan,
Sure.
Baird from the Indianapolis Star, and good luck with basketball.
Thanks a lot.